Someday the high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power, a radio hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. My co-hosts in the background are Blue and Mabel, and if you hear them wrestling around, they're just dogs, and that's what dogs do. We have a great guest on the show. Mary Lucia remains one of the most beloved radio personalities in the Twin Cities due to her time behind the microphone at Minnesota Public Radio's station, The Current, for over 17 years. She has written a brutally honest memoir entitled What Doesn't Kill Me Makes Me Weirder and Harder to Relate to that I can't recommend highly enough. It was published by the University of Minnesota Press, who just celebrated their 100th year, 1 century of publishing great authors from Minnesota and beyond. We have several things in common. We both have books published by the University of Minnesota Press. We've both done a little time on the radio. We both love New York City, are huge dog lovers. We love vinyl records, are music freaks, and both have gotten completely hammered at First Avenue. But unlike me, she has a great voice for radio. And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest, Mary Lucia. Mary, thanks so much for taking time with us today.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to be here.
You and I have only met once, but after reading your book, I feel like I know you very well. It was one of my favorite books I've written the last several years, and it's right up there with a couple of several of my other favorite Minneapolis authors' books. David Carr, Night of the Gun. Did you read that?
I sure did. What a voice. Yeah.
So powerful. And of course, Bob Mould, Shine a Little Light, Dara Moskowitz, Grumdall's Dear Dara, and then our friend Jacob Slichter, who we're going to talk a little bit about, and his great book, So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star. So you are in great company, and I can't tell you how enjoyable it was reading the book, although the parts of it dealing with your stalker were incredibly harrowing.
Well, first of all, you just named probably 4 of my favorite books of local authors, or not even just local authors. So that's amazing company to be kept. I must say that I appreciate anybody who has read the book, can acknowledge that there was parts of it that were difficult, and yet also still have come away with a sense of who I am. I think on radio, I was pretty authentic, and I don't have like a second persona. So people that listened to me over the many years I was on air would come up to me and say, I've been listening to you since Rev 105 days, and I feel like I know you. And, for the most part, I would say, well, you kind of do. I mean, there's some things, of course, you don't, but I was never really shy about sharing certain things on air. And I think if you're good at what you do, whether you're a writer, a musician, a media person, if you're putting something out there and being vulnerable, yes, you're opening yourself up to some potentially very scary things, but also some super rewarding things as well.
Well, and people really love honesty, which is, one of your tricks of the trade is you have always been who you are. That's why you developed such a devoted following. I have to ask you, I want to start out, your book got me right off the bat when I read the dedication to the Holy Trinity, Smudge, Crash, and Lefty. Tell us about, number one, your love of pugs, and tell us the story, how Smudge came into your life.
Well, yes, and I'm sure that most people don't, I don't know, maybe most people don't dedicate their books to their dogs, but I can honestly say that those three, my first being Smudge, Crash, and Lefty, were as integral to my life. They were my children. They're, let's face it, I like animals more than people. And there's no person that's been there for me every day in that way as my dogs have. But the story of Smudge is, I wanted a pug my entire adult life, and I was in a relationship with a man who I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, and I was in my 30s at the time, and he certainly was well aware of my desire for a pug, and he was not at all, adverse to animals, but for some reason he was dragging his feet about it. And then as it went on, I just started thinking, are you my father? Am I asking you permission? This is crazy.
Right.
So, long story long, he and I didn't last, but the second I was free on my own, truly living independently, I went on the hunt for a pug. And it was quite a search because I'm grateful that there's like the most serious vetting process to adopt a dog, because you don't want just some bum on the street get a pug in their home. I felt like literally I was adopting a child from China. I was jumping through so many hoops. The long story was that I ended up trying to get a puppy from this litter. Everything fell through. And then the woman took pity on me and said, well, I saw that you bonded strongly with the mom. Would you be interested in adopting her? And I said, absolutely. And we just started a life together. And it was one of those instances where I thought, I just got what I want in life. How often do you get exactly what you want? And she went everywhere with me. I shared so many stories about Smudge with my listeners, the good and the bad. And also listeners, vice versa, would tell me their dog stories. And as you know, as a dog lover, the great reward comes with some of the deepest sadness when you have to make those end-of-life decisions. And I had shared that I was sort of going through that with Smudge. After many years together, she developed an arachnoid tumor on her spine, and they had to operate. And just, I think I said in the book that, the words you don't want to hear your vet tech say is, well, we got as much as we could of it. And so then began the second phase of our life, which was basically, I felt like her on a rehabilitation schedule. And it was just one of those things, again, where unconditional love had not really presented itself to me in many instances, not really in my childhood. And it really was kind of the first time as an adult I felt that. So she and I were at the hip, and I shared with my listeners the day before that I had to say goodbye. And, the responses from my listeners were so heartfelt and so genuine and sweet and understanding. And it was never uncommon for me to respond to a stranger's email with, I'm going through this, or I'm having a hard time with this. It just felt very natural to me to have an empathetic ear. And I guess I responded back to one man in particular who said he had lost his dog, that I was terribly sorry, and I knew how deep that pain was. It was later then revealed that that was the person who ended up stalking me for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before we get to that harrowing episode in your life, and truthfully, Mary, when I read parts of the book and then I had to put it down. And when I was reading the parts about the stalker, and I live in a pretty safe neighborhood in Duluth, I would go and make sure my doors were locked.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you more about that, but I want to get back to the dogs a little bit.
Yeah.
It's my thing. They say, adopting a dog, and I've got 2 rescues that it's a contract with sorrow, which is, and part of that contract is, do you have a credit card? Because,
oh God,
yes, people don't realize what, the beautiful thing about, and I spent some time after my first rescue was hit at 44th and Chicago after it got out of my girlfriend's house. He spent several days at the U of M vet hospital. Number one, the veterinary services are as advanced as services for human beings in terms of their medical capabilities. Secondly, the prices for those services are just about as much as going into the hospital yourself.
I don't think you have to pay your personal hospital bill upon release. However, when your dog has had surgery, I think you need to, you got to pay off the balance right there before you walk out the door. It's crazy.
When my dog had been lost for 2 days, and I'd been out of town, and my girlfriend was babysitting it. Her brother came over. Dog ran out the door. Blackie was gone, and I had adopted him. Mm-hmm. He had came from a Thief River Falls kill shelter to a no-kill shelter north of Duluth. And so when and then his first adoptive parents took him to a farm, and he was there for about a day or two, chewed through his leash, and was lost in the woods in northern Minnesota for a year. He became a legend. Oh, yeah, we saw Black. He was under my truck. He was by the garbage cans. He was in the barn. Finally, a lady took her in. So by the time I got Blackie, he'd already gone through this traumatic 1 year in the woods in northern Minnesota. Anyway, fast forward, leaves my girlfriend's house in South Minneapolis, gets hit by a car at 44th in Chicago. This angel called animal control and then called us. Of course, my phone number was on his caller. Mm-hmm. We took him in, and the doctor said, we don't even know if we can do anything. We need him for 12 hours. Mm-hmm. We went in the next day, and there he was in a little oxygen tank, like a little refrigerator with the glass, mm-hmm. looking at where have you guys been and what am I doing here? And then, of course, the doctor says, well, we can do something. Do you have a credit card? Mm-hmm.
It's frightening that it comes down to that. But I also feel like, I don't know if that was not maybe your first rescue, but I know Smudge being my first rescue, I was all about, I'm doing anything I can, whether I have to knock over a liquor store on the way home to get the cash. I was at the I'll do anything point. I have grown since then to have some different feelings about that. And as you know, when you get a rescue, you don't know their trauma, what happened in that period of time that your dog was a folk legend like Dylan running through northern Minnesota. It's pretty wild to think about. Can my love undo the damage that's been done before I ever met you?
Right. And like we all know, we don't save them, they save us.
Always. Always.
We have Mary Lucia on the show for the entire show tonight. We're going to be talking about her great new book, What Doesn't Kill Me Makes Me Weirder and Harder to Relate to. We're going to do some darkness and then some great parts of her career, which is still ongoing at Radio K. And the one thing I want to talk about was interviewing my hero, Stud Sturkle.
Oh,
I can't wait to hear that story. Mary Lucia will be with us all night long on the Wall of Power Radio Hour.
How much is that doggy in the window? The one with the waggly tail. How much is that doggy in the window? I do hope that dog is for sale. I must take a trip to California and leave my poor sweetheart alone. If he has a dog, he won't be lonesome, and the doggy will have a good home. How much is that doggy in the window? The one with the waggly tail. How much is that doggy in the window? I do hope that dog is for sale. I read in the paper.
Wall of Power Radio Hour. You are back with the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. My guest for the whole show is Twin Cities broadcast legend Mary Lucia. Mary, you've interviewed so many interesting people, rock stars and more, people on their way up, people on their way out, people in town jamming. But one man I want to ask you about, who's a complete hero of mine, a radio legend himself and an author and a man of the people, is Studs Terkel. Tell us about interviewing Studs.
When the Current first launched, so I was in the afternoon drive slot from 2 to 7, and for whatever reason, the first couple of years, they put pretty much every interview on my show. So it meant that I did the bulk of interviews for the first couple of years, and that was bands, non-bands. I was talking to scientists, geologists, writers, which is great because my interest certainly spans beyond music. But Studs Terkel, who is a legend, who lived to the age of, I think, 101. And like you said, a man of the people, a man who spent a career highlighting simple stories of real people, a phenomenal sense of humor. What a humorist he was, legendary baseball fan. Yeah. An activist. And I remember that when I was lucky enough to talk to him, it was right before the election when Obama won. And all I could think was, I'm so grateful he lived to see this. But what a storyteller. So having to talk to him, and I've heard him, I consume documentaries on just about any subject, but he's really prevalent in Ken Burns' baseball documentary. And he just always has, there's a brevity to his wit. He's so thoughtful and kind. And I just felt like I literally am starting here with a legend. And he was, probably 99 years old when I talked to him. Wow. And his hearing aids were feeding back on the mic. And I was like, just let it go. But no, he ended up telling stories and explaining about how he had a fairly serious fall down his apartment stairs that had me laughing. Okay, so in order for that to happen, you're a really good storyteller. And so, yeah, it was one of those things where I thought a lot of people years later were like, well, what was your favorite interview? And they thought I would say Noel Gallagher, Jack White. And it's like Studs Terkel, hands down. See,
we've got another thing in common. I love it. One of my bucket lists, Mary, was having a martini with Studs Terkel, because he had a martini at the end of the day every day. I believe there is an archive. He has something like over 7,000 hours of radio interviews in the can.
Yeah, I believe it. And I think that what made him so special and unique was that his interest was definitely in the guy who picks up your garbage, the woman who sells you whatever. I mean, to be able to talk to anyone, I would like to think now, it's a goal of mine, but if I had a superpower, that I could talk to anyone.
Well, that is your superpower. I went back preparing for the show, listened to several of the interviews. I don't know if the content is probably owned by NPR, but boy, I'll tell you what, I think you'd have a great series of books just with transcriptions of those interviews.
Well, I think they're on YouTube. And I felt this way, Paul. I certainly think there is nothing natural about walking down a hallway and walking into a studio, meeting 4 to 5 brand new people, and then having that introduction and first conversation be broadcast live on air on radio. There's nothing natural about that. So the chances that it's going to be awkward or odd are great. So I definitely feel like with some people that I spoke with over the years, you could just sense there was a candid, refreshing, I'm just going to be honest and talk about whatever you want. There was other times I felt, God, I've got this finite amount of time and I'm not a shrink, but I don't know how much I can pull you out of your shell. You start to get to realize too that people who are very economical with their words doesn't mean that they're jerks. It just, I could separate who was just soft-spoken and who was truly just, someone I didn't really care to talk to. But over the years, there has been so many. And like I said, that was sort of the superpower I tried to hone in on. Like, I should be able to talk to any of you. And of course, some of them made me terrified. I never got to interview David Bowie. That I don't even know that I could have. But bucket list stuff, I got quite a few in there.
What people ask me that the people like my show and they go, how did you learn to interview? And my answer is I've been talking to strangers at bars for 40 years.
That's it.
It's just kind of, that's the, that's my socially, in terms of conversation, that's my end. What was your worst interview? Whether if you thought you failed or you just did not relate to the guest.
Well, I had an interview with a duo out of Los Angeles, and usually I was able to do enough prep beforehand, but for some odd reason, this one got thrown on my plate last second, and I think I was literally walking into the room with the one factoid that Joaquin Phoenix had directed a video for them. That was it. So I walked in, it was like two guys. One guy's wearing dark Ray-Ban shades. It's 3 p.m. And as Larry David said, there are two people who wear sunglasses indoors, and one is the blind and the other is a-holes. So it was clearly the latter. And again, I had empathy for somebody who had just maybe rolled out of a van and wasn't feeling up to promoting their work, or the record label was forcing them to do this. But this was downright hostile. And then something snapped in my brain. They weren't really answering my questions. And it wasn't even as though I had like a list of questions. I always felt like better to have some conversation starters, see where this goes. But it was all just like a train could run through the pauses after I would say something. And I snapped. Probably it's every radio host's dream is to actually say out loud what you've been thinking, which is, you know what? I don't care if you talk or not. It doesn't make a difference to me. So why don't you just play another song? And I was pretty fed up, but it turned so confrontational that, I actually for a hot second thought, are we going to throw down here? Because he kind of leaned out of his chair again with this bag of anger, Ray-Ban sunglass face. And the thing that I found most hilarious about the experience was that my producer had said, oh God, well, we don't have to air that. And I said, the hell we don't. I said, I believe that hearing something that uncomfortable and terrible and hearing the visible flop sweat on my part would be just as entertaining to somebody who's sitting in their car waiting on an on-ramp, So I saw merit and value in the ones that I absolutely choked.
My money would have been on you. I bet you could have kicked both of their asses at the same time with one hand behind your back. Let's talk about how exciting it must have been to get on this new radio station, The Current, and then how that led into your first package of meat from the stalker.
Well, I should say that I started my radio career in Minneapolis in 1994 at Rev 105.
Was that St. Anthony, Maine?
No, we were in the Kickernick building right on 5th and 1st.
Sure.
And I just progressed knocking around the dial for the next 28 years. But I got to say this because I think that throughout my entire career of radio, there have always been unwanted attention from listeners to varying degrees. And you certainly, as you gain more experience just in life, you can realize this person's just maybe a little bit boundaryless or a little overzealous. This person's actually a threat. And so throughout the career, I had been deciphering through a lot of weirdos. And it wasn't new to me, even at the Current. Starting at the Current, I've had the fortune to start two brand new formatted stations in my career. One was Rev and one was the Current. The Current, coming out of Minnesota Public Radio, we sort of felt at the time, the people that were assembled, that it was creatively a gold mine. We built a library with our own music. It was such an experiment, but I also knew that in 2004, that people were incredibly hungry for new music, for something a little more challenging. And the fact that it was public radio, wasn't commercial radio, only sweetened the pot. And so it really, truly felt like a real experiment when we went on air. I had been doing afternoons throughout my entire time. And like I said, I had certainly received my share of disturbing even voicemails, letters, emails, things like that. Well, one afternoon, all of our mail slots were housed in the kitchen on the 4th floor at NPR. And somebody had said to me, "Hey, Lutz, you probably want to go check your mail. I think it needs your attention because it smells." And I thought, well, I doubt it's flowers. I thought just by the way they said this, I couldn't have imagined what it would be. But I walked in and there was this white butcher paper with like 10 pounds of raw meat in it. And the person had to drop it off at the front desk. So this was just prior to them having a much better security system in their lobby. Of course, there was nothing attached to it, no note, no nothing. It just sent a chill down my spine. And of course, the absurdity then of everyone asking me, "Who's it from?" Like, I don't know. No one I know would do this. So I had to carry said butcher paper down to our lawyer's office. I was so embarrassed by it. And yet, what had I done? And it was, if anything, it was the firing shot of what would then be 3 years of equally disturbing and just questionable behavior on one person's part that affected me at work and at home.
And it took a while for your coworkers, your bosses at the Current, and the police to really take this seriously.
I know it happens all the time. I know that I'm sure there's a pecking order. It might go television, radio, print, but I know that there's unwanted attention all the time. Probably maybe more women than men, but I'm sure men have had this treatment as well. So it's not as though stalking was a brand new idea to anyone, but my bringing this story to my coworkers, of course, some of my friends truly understood the terror that this was putting into my life. As far as the company went, I mean, I think in all due respect that they are about the optics and how does, is the storefront clean? And this was messy. It didn't reflect well on anyone. And this is so crazy, Paul, because this was before. Now everyone has a Ring camera or some kind of camera system. This was prior to that. So he had been continually sending really scary things at work. But again, I never had a name to attach to it until much later. And so you think about things like trying to get a restraining order, and that's virtually impossible to do if you don't have a name and an address. Then trying to explain to law enforcement officers, this is a person I don't know, I've never met. They're more familiar with, I guess it's whatever they call the kinds of domestic stalking where it's maybe an ex-husband or landlord or something. They really had no idea what to say to me when I said, I'm on the radio and I don't know this guy. He doesn't know me, but he has been here at my house. He has been threatening me, my dogs. It was disheartening. Hence the title of the book. It literally threw me into this place where I felt so completely isolated and weird and very hard to relate to.
We've got Mary Lucia on the Wall of Power Radio Hour. We're going to have to do another episode, Mary, because there's so much other things I'd love to talk to you about. But we're going to play a little music and then come back and hear a little more of the story and how she pulled out of this darkness. Every breath you take, You're back with the Wall of Power Radio Hour. We are having the most interesting conversation with radio legend Mary Lucia about her great new book, What Doesn't Kill Me Makes Me Weirder and Harder to Relate to. We finished the last segment just talking about your trial dealing with this unknown stalker. How did you finally figure out who this man was?
That was my own sleuthing. And that was part of the frustration is I felt like I had to be my own advocate. I had to be my own detective. I went back through hundreds upon hundreds of deleted emails throughout the years because at one point, one of the crazy things that was sent to me had initials, and it was just a shot in the dark I took. I went back into, like I said, hundreds of deleted emails, and what I found was an email from a guy who emailed me saying my dog died, and I had responded, and I put two and two, and I said, oh, this is the person. But then still, I don't know him. I don't know where he lives. And people need to understand, too, to get an order of protection, which is the first step that you have to do. That doesn't mean it's going to be served. You can file for it. Also, you as the victim, they keep calling you, you have to pay for it. And then there's just this absolute lunacy of trying to serve it to a person that could be indigent or last address not known. So I think that was prolonging mine. It was all in all just under 3 years of just kind of torture. And it changed so much about who I was as a person. I'd been a very open person, like you said, just talking to anybody. Strangers are my favorite people normally. And I was so angry that a complete stranger was able to take from me all the things that I thought made me good on the radio, made me who I was. And so all those modifications and changes that come with going through a trauma like that. And when somebody tells you, I know where you are at every minute, you believe them. You believe them. And it's not a good way to live.
And you still have to work, and you still have to live life, and you still have to take care of your dogs, and you still have to try to be a friend. I can't imagine it. I mean, I'm assuming that it was absolutely consuming. I mean, when do you have time to not think about it? You
don't. It was one of those, I think my work would have liked me to come back business as usual, but it was not possible. I ended up coming back to work actually early. I had taken a leave because that's when the trial was supposed to happen. He evaded law, blah, blah. I went back to work in November of 2015, and my date in court was December 30th, 2015. So I was on air about a month and a half before I was ever able to give my impact statement or even be in the same room with this person. And yeah, I felt like I don't know that I can be my normal self because, in radio, you're like, I'm dying to go see this show tonight. See you there. It'll be great. I never wanted anyone to know where I was going to be, what I was doing. And then ultimately getting into that courtroom with him in the room the first time, and the sentencing being probation. And he walked out of the court 10 minutes after I did, a free person. So the lack of, justice or the lack of understanding, stalking is a felony. And he was looking at 3 counts of felony stalking and 2 terroristic threats. And he got off on probation. So something's broken there.
That is an amazing story. I want people to read the book to find out how that all ends, and get it at finer bookstores everywhere. But we only have about 5 minutes left with the great Mary Lucia. So I want to, number one, compliment you on this incredible book. You're brutally honest with yourself. You left no stone unturned. The one thing that I loved, first of all, that your dad was named Hal, which is a name that somebody should bring back. My dad was a bit of a swimmer, but he never swam while smoking cigarettes.
A lit cigar. He could swim with a lit cigar. I think we have a photo of it somewhere. He was the single most entertaining and eccentric person, but he was one of those people that I don't know if he knew he was funny. He just would say the most absurd things, and it just informed a lot of my own humor later in life too. But yeah, it's a really my family is not the most traditional, and we all have our stories and our backstories, and I'm just so grateful that me writing this book it was both entertaining and also you get an idea of what that crime can really do to a person.
Was it cathartic writing the book?
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Yep. Don't know yet, but I'll let you know, Paul.
All you too. Mary, tell us, we just have a few minutes left. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to music for a little bit. Tell us what if you had to say this was the greatest music show I ever saw, what would that be?
Oh, man. Let's see. I can honestly say that some of the best shows that I have seen have been at First Avenue.
Of course.
And I must say that when I worked at Rev 105, we were in the Kickernick building, which was on 5th and 1st. And it was part of the Wyman building, which was attached to Prince's Club. Glam Slam, I think it was called at the time. So I had a bartender friend up there, and I worked from 7 to midnight. And he would just call me on the radio line and say, he's here. And I would hop over at midnight when I got off of work, And I think people that didn't live here cannot get their heads around the concept that you could have a bartender friend go, he's here, it's on, get over here. And you are going to see a Prince performance in front of 40 people in Erotic City, the side room upstairs at his club. I will never take that for granted that I was able to witness that and stand that close to what I consider almost one of the greatest talents ever. So that, I would say, literally, you could put probably any Prince show up against anything else I've seen.
And I include Charlie Mingus, Miles Davis, Duke Ellington, Joni Mitchell, and the rest of it. But I think Prince was the greatest musician in the last 100 years.
I agree. I did see John Lee Hooker at the Caboose.
Oh, that's a very cool show.
That was a good one.
I saw him at Bolevsky's. I bumped into Prince. Cats Under the Stars had just recorded our first single. We did a reggae version of Louie Louie that Robert Christgau said, what are they thinking? But I bumped into him. I just had the 45 RPMs pressed, and I bumped into him at Super America at 22nd and Lindale.
Lindale, of course.
And was able to give him the CD. So that's my Prince story. And saw him in concert a couple of times. One of the best. And Mary Lucia, you are one of the best. Once again, I highly recommend get Mary's book. You're going to love it. Your turns of phrase are amazing. You're an incredible writer. I love the honesty. You've got an incredible sense of humor in these stories, whether they're dark and dreary. They're all hypnotic. It ends on a great note. I'm looking forward to Volume 2. And thank you so much for your time, Mary Lucia. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. I really had a good time chatting.
And extra treats for the doggies.
Yes, always.
All of my purple life, I've been looking for a type that would want to be my wife. That was my intention.
So pretty, you and me, erotic city, come alive. Erotic city, can't you see? So pretty, you and me, every time I come.
Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show is produced by Paul Metsa, engineered by Patrick Lilia. We'd like to thank our guest, Mary Lucia. Go buy her book, What Doesn't Kill Me Makes Me Weirder and Harder to Relate to. You can find my books and records by just going to paulmetsa.com, see where you can track those bad boys and girls down. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.